Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Norman Manassa, Director of the National Education Project here in Washington, D.C. On behalf of the Board of Directors of this project, I'm delighted to welcome you all here, and since it's on the internet, to all people across the country who have tuned into this broadcast. Welcome to the 4th annual live national read-along of the Bill of Rights over the internet. We're delighted that we have students here who will be reading the Bill of Rights shortly from Springfield Estates Elementary School in Springfield, Virginia, and from St. Peter's School here on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. We're delighted that they're here, more than I can say, for not only the reading, but for what they represent. This is, among any number of things, most certainly a handing down of the liberties of America from one generation to the next. The National Education Project is a non-political organization. You can come to our website and get a free copy of the Bill of Rights. It's on one page. We do not tell you what the amendments mean. We simply give you the document and you figure it out, which is your obligation as an American, especially if you have children. The website, just to give the address, is www.national-education-project.org. And you can download the Bill of Rights free, as I say. It has a particular attribute to it. If you haven't seen the Bill of Rights in a while, this is what it looks like. The words have not been changed in 225 years, these 10 amendments, which are the fundamental laws, and this is the law, by the way, it was ratified by the states. These are the laws that protect the people of this country against improper uses of power by government, federal, state, local, any federal official, bureaucrat, anybody you can imagine. These are the law of the land, and they must be respected by everybody. At the bottom of this particular document, though, the children sign their name, they add their school picture, and they put it on the family refrigerator door. Now, there are two purposes to that. Once children have signed it and their picture is on it, the lesson is it belongs to them, and it does. It is the people's Bill of Rights. Sometimes I think people think it's the government's Bill of Rights. Well, it's not. It's the Bill of Rights of the people. And second, because it's on the refrigerator door, refrigerators don't move and they last for 20 years. Anytime somebody goes to the refrigerator, anybody in the family, they see these phrases. These are the phrases that keep us a free people. No cruel and unusual punishment. What does that mean? It means no torture. The federal government cannot take your tax money and hire people to torture Americans. It says so right here. They knew enough about torture from the European kings, and they didn't want any of that here. It also says, if you're arrested for a crime, a speedy and public trial. Speedy trial. Why? Because the sheriff could put you in jail for 35 years and not have a trial because he just couldn't quite get around to it. Well, not with this document. See, they knew that they were politicians, and they didn't trust politicians, which is why they created the Bill of Rights. It protects them, the political people, just as it protects everybody else. And it protects the folks in the military, and it protects the police, protects all the people I like, and it protects all the people I don't like. If you're in this country legally or illegally, this document protects you. And that was the whole point of why they wrote it down in the first place. They didn't want to say, well, my grandfather was there at the convention in 1787, and I'm sure they put that in because he told me when I was a little boy. Well, what was that going to do? They put it on a piece of paper, and not a word has been changed in 225 years. And it's part of course, the Constitution. And if you haven't seen that in a while, this is it, this little bitty book. This is the law that governs the lives of 330 million Americans. Millions, hundreds of millions are bound by this little book. It costs $1 over the Senate. It's amazing. And the Bill of Rights. And it is the Bill of Rights, whose birthday today is 225 years, that we celebrate. The proper celebration ought to begin, however, with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mrs. Allison Atherton, St. Peter's School, has agreed to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mrs. Atherton, if you would, please. Please stand, face the flag to your right.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Alison. Thank you all. Before we begin the readings, I want you all to know that this is a work of many hands, as you can tell. And I would want to acknowledge the adults here tonight who will be introducing the children. If you would stand, please, and stay standing. Again, Mrs. Allison Atherton, fourth grade teacher, St. Peter's School here on Capitol Hill. Who has the Second Amendment? Marie? Mrs. Marie Horbley, who is Assistant Professor of Language and Literature at Northern Virginia Community College and also a docent at the Supreme Court of the United States. Inspector Michael Colligan, who is with the Metropolitan Police Department here in the District of Columbia, and courtesy, by the way, of Chief Peter Newsham, to whom we're both grateful. Carl Gerdes, who's a buddy of mine here in the judiciary. We work together, and he is a prominent leader of Boy Scouts in Northern Virginia. Mr. Jan Horbley. Jan and I are old buddies from the Supreme Court. We both worked for Chief Justice Burger together years ago. Jan was the Chief's special assistant, and he then became Circuit Executive and Clerk of Court of the Court of Appeals of the Federal Circuit here in Washington, D.C. We have with us Mrs. Mary Randolph, who is a prime mover behind this event. When I called her about it 4 years ago, I was describing this. No one's ever done this before, by the way, ever, anywhere. And I got halfway through my speech, and she said, "I'm in." Well, you live for people like that. And for Mrs. Randolph, I'm so grateful. And we have Michelle Horbley, Captain Michelle Horbley of the United States Army, who's a local girl, a graduate of Bishop Ireton High School, an All-American or All-Metropolitan soccer player, is noted in the Post one day. She joined the Army in 2006. She attended jump school, made 13 parachute jumps, if you can imagine. Has 2 master's degrees. I'm amazed I know people like this, to be quite honest with you. And she served in Iraq from 2010 to 2011. And Michelle, we're very grateful for your service. I probably have forgotten somebody. I apologize, ma'am. I've forgotten your name. I'm sorry.
Lori Prater.
Lori Prater. We had a couple of our folks didn't show up, so I was grabbing for willing victims, and Mrs. Prater was kind enough to jump in and help out. Thank you so much. And the gentleman at the end again. Sorry. Mark Prater. Well, you're this.
Family.
Yeah, I guess I do. It's a triple benefit. My goodness, thank you so much. Did I mention nobody's getting paid? Did I? Okay. Just want to make sure it's a nonprofit. You're telling me corporation, so I just want to make that clear. I have everybody then, I hope. Do I? Thank you. Please sit down. Thank you so much. The children here, of course, are the most important ones. I was asking beforehand, we have 4th graders here. Would you raise your hand, please? 4th graders? 5th graders? We have a 6th grader, 1 or 2, don't we? All right. Do you all like 6th grade? You like 6th grade? I love 6th grade. 6th grade was 3 of the best years of my life. Thank you so much. Somebody write that boy's name down there. I was taught years ago to try to think of a joke before you do any public speaking. So I have a joke for the children, see if they think of this. My name is Norman Manasseh. So I'm going to ask you what my name is, and you say, Mr. Manasseh. All right? So I'll do it now. What's my name? Mr. Manasseh. All right, now we're going to say it 3 times. What's my name? Mr. Manasseh. What's my name? Mr. Manasseh. What's my name? Mr. Manasseh. Knock, knock. See, you forgot my name already. My 5-year-old niece taught me that joke. There is one other joke. one of my jobs after I was aide to Chief Justice Burke for a couple of years, which got me started on this whole thing, by the way. I used to sit on the bench right behind the justices during oral argument, where I was appalled to know how little I knew about the Bill of Rights. Frankly, it was an embarrassment. But I figured most Americans were perhaps in the same boat I was. So that was the genesis of everything that we're doing here tonight. And years later, I was away from the court for a while, and I came back, and I was asked to write the computer training manual. We were bringing computers into the court to do the court's opinions. And I was given the assignment of writing the manual and training everybody, which I did. I was happy to do. But in that manual, you have to, after you've done all the explanation of what a keyboard is and a screen. It's 1980, by the way. You had to say that blinking thing on the screen is called a cursor. You know, that's so far that long ago. But eventually, the law clerks and the justices had to type something. So I'm a big fan of Henny Youngman, a great vaudevillian comedian of 100 years ago. And so they were typing, a guy walks up to me on the street and wants to borrow $5 until payday. I said, when's payday? And he says, how do I know you're the one who's working? That's the joke. That joke is 100 years old. And it may be difficult for the young children here to realize something of 100 years of age. The Bill of Rights is twice as old. Actually, the Bill of Rights is tonight 225 years of age. And it is that Bill of Rights and that great birthday that we celebrate. And we're so delighted that the children are here to help us do that. Before the reading, we are very fortunate to have an old friend of mine into this project, a very prominent gentleman here in Washington, D.C., Mr. Tommy Wells. Mr. Wells spoke to us the last time we gathered for this. He was a city councilman then from Ward 6, my ward, and he explained the functions of government, the three branches of which he was on the legislative branch, and how in creating legislation for the city, he had to be concerned about the Bill of Rights. Now, Mr. Wells has been promoted, if I may say, to a cabinet position for our new mayor. And I asked him tonight to talk about, now that he's on the executive side, not creating legislation, but implementing legislation, carrying out legislation, how one does that and still respects the Bill of Rights. Because this is the exercise of governmental power, and the people's rights have got to be protected. So, ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, it is an honor and a great delight to introduce to you Honorable Tommy Wells.
Thank you, Norman. And since you are so good at telling jokes, I've decided I'm just not going to tell mine. That was too good. So welcome to the Hills Center. This, as many of you know, used to be an old naval hospital built around the Civil War. And it functioned that way for a while. Then it was a home for retired military. And then it went through different uses. And now it has reinvented itself, as, of course, many of you from St. Peter's and from the Hill know, that this is now our community center, a place where we do a lot of things like this together. We have classes of cooking and art and all sort of things, but this is our Hill Center, our community center on Capitol Hill, and welcome. We're very proud of it, and we're very proud that you're here for this special event. And especially to the kids, you know, this is your show, and we'll talk a little bit ahead of time, but it's your show, and we're just all leading up to you. We're your warm-up act. And to the parents and all the adults involved, thank you. And thank you for being here on a very cold night. If you, it's very hard to say no to Norman. He is one of the nicest, firmest men I've met. I've never said no to Norman, and that is, you know, especially because this is such a passion that clearly with when he worked just down the street, down at the Supreme Court, and he got to have the experience that he just started to tell you a little bit about with the Chief Justice Burger, which is where they decide things all related to the Constitution. And tonight, we're celebrating that. Its birthday, 225 years, as he noted. And in a lot of ways, for the adults that know about history and know about countries, 225 years is a very brief period of time. And so the fact that our Constitution is 225 years old is pretty darn good. It's still a brief period of time in civilization. And, you know, there's the story of when they were deciding about the Constitution and trying to figure out what kind of government we're going to have after the Revolution, that Benjamin Franklin came out. They had been holed up pretty much in secret there in Philadelphia, and Benjamin Franklin came out, and a woman approached him and said, you know, Franklin, what do we get? Do we get a monarchy or do we get a republic? And Franklin said, a republic, if we can keep it. And so that is really our job and part of what we're doing tonight, to celebrate the Constitution and go over the Bill of Rights, and to remember that we are a nation of laws, that one of the favorite things you learn in law school right early on is that you learn that the people are sovereign. That it's not the president, it's not the legislature, it's not the courts, but the people are the sovereign. And so, in other words, children, the people are the king and queens. And that's you and that's us here tonight. So as Mr. Manasseh noted, that I have been involved in government for a while, and many of us here, we're a company town and been involved in government in different ways. And what we're very acutely aware of is that we have three branches of government. We have the executive, and we're seeing the peaceful turnover once again after, I think this is the 57th or 58th inauguration. And we will peacefully transfer power from one person to the next president. And then we also have a legislature where they make the laws, and of course the courts who handle the disputes according to the Constitution. So I have been, I'm trained as a lawyer, but then I was a city councilman, and I represented this area. And so I was on the legislative side. And so on the legislative side, you pass laws. You say how things are going to work. You set taxes, or you do a number of things, but you don't really implement them. What you do is you get to write the laws. Implementation is done by the executive branch, by the folks that the president oversees. They've got to implement the laws that us legislators pass. So I'll tell you about one law that I passed. When I was a city councilman, I was acutely aware that this ward borders the Anacostia River. And one of the things I was very worried about was trash. And I was worried about trash that I saw in the river. And I thought, you know, if I'm going to be, you know, say that I was a councilman, I need to be able to say I've done at least one thing for the environment. So I did a lot of research and found out that a big portion of the trash in the river were those plastic disposable bags. So I did the research, tried to figure out a law to help get the bags out, and what I learned from going to IKEA and learning from IKEA, that IKEA put a 5-cent tax or a 5-cent charge on bags, and the use of bags dropped by 90%, and then they just phased it out. And what I became aware of is that we needed a law that at least made you say, do you need a bag with that? Because often we'd go to the store and I'd get some batteries for something that I need right away, and they put it in a bag, and I'd leave there and I'd put the bag in the trash. It was just no thought of, did I need a bag with that? Well, I didn't. So what was the amount that we could just get in people's mind so that they could decide, do I need a bag with that? And so we thought, and I thought, that IKEA had the right answer. So I passed a law, which usually politicians getting ready to run for re-election don't usually charge you a nickel for something you thought was free and then ask you to vote for them. But we live in a great place, and people thought that was a pretty good idea, and we passed the law. It's called actually the way I named the law, which is a little clever, is that I named it the Anacostia River Cleanup Initiative, so that anytime I had to debate the law, that I made my opponent say the law. Like, what's the name of the law? Do you even know the name? They'd have to say the name. Then they'd say, look, I really want to clean up the river, not just this way. So always reminding folks that it's about cleaning up the environment. So the other thing I did with my chief of staff is that we've thought, how much money would it raise? So we tried to figure out from the different grocery stores how many bags they use, and And he wrote on a napkin, and just literally was on a napkin, said, about $4 million a year maybe? And so that's what he wrote on the napkin. Now, we passed the law. And one of the interesting things about the law, and you rarely ever get a law like this, is that you can't really, it can't fail. Because if it raises a lot more money than you thought, you were bound, the way, one thing I didn't mention, we have to use the money for educating and cleaning, everything about cleaning up and protecting and preserving our waterways, the Anacostia River in particular. So that money has to be used for cleaning up the river and for reusable bags and all the things to help implement the law. But if it doesn't raise that amount of money, then it means there's fewer bags. So you can't really lose. Either you have more money for cleanup or there's fewer bags that are in the environment. So that was, rarely do you get a law like that to where when someone says it's not raising what you said it would, well, that's because it's working. Or they'd say it's raising a lot more money than you thought it would, and I would say, well, that's because we need more money for cleaning up the river. So that was a good thing about that law. But what I did not anticipate was then, because I passed that law, when the mayor was elected, she said, I need someone to run the Department of the Environment. And she said, who can I think of? And she had been on the city council with me. She said, you know, Wells, you care about the environment. You passed that bag law, so we're going to make you head of the environment. So now I'm on the executive side. And what that means is that that money the bag law raises, I get to spend. I never thought I would get to do that. And so with the way we spend the money, certainly we buy reusable bags. You may have seen some of them, Skip the Bag, Save the River, and different slogans. We put in a lot of things called trash traps, and we fund local organizations to get the trash out. But the other thing that I funded, just if you ever want to avail yourself of this, is free boat trips on the Anacostia River. I decided that since people care about the river, they're helping pay for the cleanup of the river, they should get free boat rides to be able to go enjoy the river should they want to go look at the river. So we take classes, we take groups between 12 to 20, and it's through the Anacostia Riverkeeper, it's through the Anacostia Watershed Society, and the Earth Conservation Corps. And they give free boat rides up and down the river all year round. It's a little cold right now, so you may want to wait till spring, but that's the bag law. So, you know, one of the things that's interesting is that if anybody ever believes that, let's say we give them a fine for not charging the bag law, and the way we find out is that, you know, people call us, and they go on 311 and they say, I just got a bag and they didn't charge me. And it's funny how many people will tell on the stores for not doing that. So if it's not necessarily Bill of Rights, but it is true that if they believe they're unfairly fined, they can go to the courts, and that there's laws, and there's a way that I can't just fine anybody whether it's right or wrong. We have 3 branches of government to be sure that we're fair, that we administer the laws fairly according to the way that they're written, and that, of course, that the people are treated fairly. So those are 3 branches of government, and then tonight we're going to talk about certainly the Bill of Rights, which is, I think Norman would agree, is probably about the most important part of the Constitution, because that's where we secure our freedom. That was fought for in the Revolution. That's what we have to revisit, remember, protect as we do down at the Supreme Court, but also as we do as a people, as we exercise our rights through voting and being sure that we have a fair and just government, because we're the kings and queens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. It's an honor to have you here, as it always is. I wrote him and invited him, and I used the word narrative because he spoke along these lines the last time we gathered to read the Bill of Rights from the standpoint of an elected official in this city. And I asked him to continue the narrative, and that was the word I used, because it's a narrative of how we administer power here, where, as Mr. Wells mentioned, the people are sovereign. So for, I don't know how many times I've thanked you, but I thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for Tommy Wells, our good friend. Thank you so much. And now we turn to the reading of the Bill of Rights. And we'll begin with the First Amendment. Mary?
Good evening. I'm Mary Randolph, and it is my honor to introduce Galia Alsadig from Springfield Estates Elementary School, who will read the First Amendment.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Good evening. I am Marie Horbley, and it is my pleasure to introduce Elliot Crowell from St. Peter's School, who will read the Second Amendment.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Good evening. My name is Lori Prater, and it is my honor to introduce Justin Hagan from Springfield Estates Elementary School, who will be reading the Third Amendment.
No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law.
Good evening. I'm Michael Culligan, and it is my honor to introduce Sky Greenwood from St. Peter's School, who will read the Fourth Amendment.
The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
Good evening. I'm Mark Prater, and it is my honor to introduce Maya Pattison from Springfield Estates Elementary School, who will read the Fifth Amendment.
No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property, without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation.
Good evening. I am Allison Atherton, and it is my honor to introduce James Prater from St. Peter's School, who will read the Sixth Amendment.
In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense.
Good evening. I'm Jan Horbley. My honor to introduce Garrett Cook from Springfield Estates Elementary School, who will read the Seventh Amendment.
In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law.
Good evening. I'm Carl Gerdes, and it is my honor to introduce Emily Reed from St. Peter's School, who will read the Eighth Amendment.
Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, no cruel and unusual punishments inflicted.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Horbley, and it is my honor to introduce Alexandra Stearns from Springfield Estates Elementary School, who will read the Ninth Amendment.
The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
It is also my honor tonight to introduce Michael Schaefer from St. Peter's School, who will read the 10th Amendment.
The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people.
Passing the Bill of Rights from one generation to another for 2 centuries now. The passing of the Bill of Rights now is to you. And at some time, hopefully a long way down the road, the people here who are taller than you will not be around. But you will be, and the country and the Bill of Rights are yours to protect. But before all that happens, would all the students please stand to accept our applause? Thank you very much. Now, one thing we do every year is, this is being videotaped after the broadcast. We'll provide for all the children and all the adults who introduce them a thumb drive with the entire video, just so you know this great thing that you helped to begin tonight. But before that, we've got something you might even be more interested in, which is a birthday cake. This is a birthday after all, and we have coffee, tea for everybody, birthday cake, cookies, hot chocolate, all sorts of things, probably too much of it, so feel free to take some home with you for brothers and sisters who weren't able to come tonight. So let me say this great thing that you've done, the passing on of the Bill of Rights to a next generation of Americans, the liberties of the people. We celebrate America, we celebrate all of you, and on this fine night, we celebrate the Bill of Rights. Thank you all and good night.